Hello friends, in this video we'll study about the structure of photosynthetic pigments and chemiosmosis. So here we start with the structure of chlorophyll. This is the structure of chlorophyll A and this is the structure of chlorophyll B. Both of the chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, they have a porphyrin ring which is also known as the head in common. Here we see magnesium surrounded by 4 nitrogen atoms like this, and similarly same structure we find in chlorophyll B molecule. This part is known as the hydrocarbon tail, and here this part is the hydrocarbon tail, which are actually similar in both chlorophyll A and B. The only structural difference is CH3 group here in chlorophyll A and CHO group here in chlorophyll B. Okay. Chlorophyll A is the key pigment which captures light in light reactions, while chlorophyll B is a separate group of accessory pigments. Chlorophyll B is an accessory pigment. Both chlorophyll A and B work best in violet, blue and red light. Effectiveness of both is least in green color of spectrum. As we saw in the diagram, CH3 is a functional group in chlorophyll A and CHO is a functional group in chlorophyll B. Coming to the third pigment, that is carotenoids. They absorb violet and blue-green light. They are yellow and orange colored. They broaden the spectrum of colors for photosynthesis and are also photoprotective. What they do, they form reactive oxidative molecules with those compounds which otherwise could be dangerous for the cell, hence known as antioxidants. We cannot synthesize antioxidants in our body, but plants can. Some of the vegetables and fruits which are colored, like they have orange or red color, like carrots, they are very abundant in carotenoids and hence we are advised to eat more of them. Coming to the absorption spectrum and the action spectrum. This is the absorption spectrum of the various photosynthetic pigments. The x-axis shows the wavelength of light in nanometers, and the y-axis it shows the absorption of light. And the lights with shorter wavelength, they have high energy, and the lights with longer wavelength, they have low energy. And this graph shows the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A here, chlorophyll B here, and the carotenoids here. This graph shows the action spectrum. Here on x-axis we have the wavelength of light in nanometers and the y-axis shows the rate of photosynthesis. And the graph itself is self-explanatory, showing the rate of photosynthesis at different wavelengths of light. Coming to chemiosmosis. What is chemiosmosis? It is the mechanism by which ATP synthesis occurs in photosynthesis, also known as photophosphorylation. So we'll study how ATP synthesis actually occurs in photosynthesis. In my previous videos, I told you about the light dependent reactions where we saw the photosystem 1, photosystem 2 and the production of ATP. Here we will study how ATP is actually formed, what is the procedure. Similar process occurs in mitochondria. So this mechanism of ATP synthesis occurs in mitochondria too, where this process takes place in the inner membrane of mitochondria. Here in chloroplast, it occurs in the membrane of thylakoids. And in both, it occurs via the proton gradient. So we'll learn what is actually a proton gradient. See, we see this diagram. This is the picture of a thylakoid showing the thylakoid membrane. This is the thylakoid membrane. This is the thylakoid space. This part is the stroma. And in the membrane, we have photosystem 2 and photosystem 1 as we saw in the previous videos too. So we start with the splitting of water. After splitting of water, hydrogen ions start accumulating within the lumen of the thylakoids. Okay. Water is split into 2 electrons, 2 hydrogen ions and an oxygen atom. Very clearly we see here that water is being split Obviously, it splits after the light energy falls on the photosystem too. So water is split into two electrons, two hydrogen ions, and one oxygen atom. Hence, I've written half O2. So one oxygen atom. What happens to them? These two electrons, what they do, they replace the chlorophyll's electron twice. These two electrons, they are replacing the chlorophyll. This is chlorophyll A in photosystem 2. They're replacing it twice. The two hydrogen ions, they contribute to the high hydrogen ion concentration in the thylakoid space. This thylakoid space, its hydrogen ion concentration is increasing, so these hydrogen ions will contribute to the high hydrogen ion concentration over here. And this oxygen atom will join another oxygen atom to form oxygen gas. Now, as electrons travel down the electron transport chain, as we studied in the light dependent reactions, that the electrons, they will travel down the electron transport chain. This is electron transport chain. As we studied in the previous videos, plastoquinone, then plastocyanin. This is how the electrons, they travel. So, what happens while they're traveling? Four hydrogen ions are pumped into the thylakoid space. Four hydrogen ions are pumped into the thylakoid space, back to the stroma. Back to the stroma, down to thylakoid space, increasing the hydrogen ion concentration, obviously. And when the hydrogen ion concentration will increase, what will happen? Decreasing the pH. So the pH of the thylakoid space will decrease. The diffusion of hydrogen ions from the thylakoid space back to the stroma. Now, the diffusion of hydrogen ions from the thylakoid space to the stroma, this is stroma, powers the ATP synthase. This is the ATP synthase. So, what happens? Producing ATP. This is how ADP is converted to ATP. And low energy electrons from water end up in NADPH. NADPH formation removes hydrogen ions from the stroma. See, this is NADPH formation here. How it is formed? By addition of hydrogen ions to NADP via NADP reductase. When these hydrogen ions are added to NADP forming NADPH, what is happening actually? The high concentration of hydrogen ions in the thylakoid space will decrease because they are used up over here. So, removes the hydrogen ions from the stroma, decreasing its hydrogen ion concentration and increasing the pH. And the NADPH which is formed here and the ATP which is formed here in chemiosmosis, they are actually used later in the Calvin cycle or the light independent reactions. This is all about the structure of the photosynthetic pigments and the chemiosmosis. Thank you friends for watching the video. Thank you.